drop down. Wendy Gerard.
Come on down, Wendy.
Oh, I do wish that Bill Atherton had been here because he did a great performance. I'm not sure whether Rock remembers this, but I remembered it for the first time in 30 years. That last special effects shot in Night of the Meek, we were always going right up to the deadline. And we aired here in the U.S. on Fridays, but we had to deliver. We had to satellite to Canada on Thursday. Thursday, we did not have that special effect. Canada saw a work print. And it was beamed in finally we got it done on Friday, and the rest of the continental, Americas saw it the way you just saw it now. But
another Christmas miracle.
Another Christmas miracle. But anyway, I'm just going to ask some people about specific episodes and about their involvement in the show, how it began. Yes.
This thing, Paul's here.
Paul Lynch as well.
Oh, Paul, shit, I'm sorry, Paul, where are you? Making me feel like I'm interrogated here for my...
You might have gone to the restrooms.
Director Paul Lynch, yeah.
Yeah, Director Paul Lynch will be here in a minute as soon as he...
Is Steve here?
No.
No, apparently not. No. All the actors punked out except for Wendy. God bless her. Rock was actually the first writer, staff writer hired for the Twilight Zone. So I was wondering, Rock, if you could tell us how it happened and what that meant to you when it did.
Yeah, I mean, I had been writing, just trying to break in for years, and was writing spec absolutely everything. So I'd written a couple of spec episodes for a show called Darkroom, which you had actually worked on.
That's right.
It was kind of a Twilight Zone-esque kind of show on ABC. That was a few years before
There he is.
Our Twilight Zone. Here comes Paul Lynch.
Here's Paul.
And so I had these two spec kind of Twilight Zone scripts, and ended up got them submitted to the show, and I was pulled out of the slush pile and joined truly just the most amazing group of people, starting with Phil DeGarrett, who was the man most responsible for everything I've had since then. Jim Crocker, who was Phil's right-hand man, and then Harlan and this guy. And it was just a terrific, an amazing first experience.
Yeah, it was. I'd been in the business a few years before Rock, so I kind of knew how special this experience was at the start. I think Rock probably thought that it was all going to be like that from that point on.
Yeah, no, and it absolutely has.
Absolutely. Brad,
Yeah.
you just like I worked with Phil DeGarrett on Simon & Simon.
Exactly.
Why don't you tell us just how you made the transition to Twilight Zone and how you guys determined what the look of the show was going to be?
I had operated on the first two Simon & Simons, which Phil was the creator of, and when the show finally went to series, he asked me if I would be willing to move up and be the director of photography on the show, and of course I was there with bells on. We had a blast on that, separated for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden he was hired by CBS to head the Twilight Zone, a reboot of the Twilight Zone. And we had several conversations up at his house about what he wanted to achieve, what he wanted to do, and what he thought I could bring to the project. And it was truly Camelot. It was for myself and my crew to be able to every 3 days turn on a dime and create a new look, a new style for every show that you guys came up with, you brilliant cats, that gave us the ability to make beautiful photography and beautiful storytelling through photography. And we tried to stay out of the way as much as we could, but I remember I was loading the sets up with a lot of smoke in those days, so
It was you.
yeah, and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes at the same time. More smoke, guys, let's get it in here. But that was the 80s, but it was, to even be a part of this Twilight Zone and the rebooting of it. I grew up with it. I watched it. I watched Rod Serling's Twilight Zones. I love them dearly. I still know almost every one of them, and what we were able to bring back in 1985 to me was probably one of the highlights of my career, if not the biggest highlight. I've gone on to achieve other things, but I look back at it with fond memories. Obviously, Phil and I were very, very close, and I was with him all through his sickness, and brought him back on JAG, and it was a love affair, for sure. As you guys well know, Phil was a pretty great guy, and open, and certainly loyal, and willing to give people an opportunity, which he gave me, and I will always be blessed that he did that, and that I was able to be on this show with all of you.
And I think it would be remiss of me at this point not to mention a few people who were a vital part of the Twilight Zone, and who are no longer with us.
Yeah.
The first is Philip Daguerre,
Yeah.
our executive producer and our fearless leader.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey Frand, the best line producer I ever worked with.
Yeah.
Wes Craven, who directed some of the best episodes we
They
did.
did the first three, actually.
And Patrice Messina, a writer of The Convict's Piano, Grace Note, and she was a large part of our hearts.
Yeah.
Alan,
And Paul Tucker.
can I
And
say
Paul, yes.
something?
Yeah.
Hi, as I was watching tonight, I was remembering that Rod Serling changed television in a dynamic way. He came out and he asked for people to accept inclusiveness, to think of each other, to eliminate greed. And in watching these, I see that same spirit. And at this time in our country, inclusiveness, acceptance, all these things that were such a part of Twilight Zone really need to go on in other ways. We have multiple outlets. So speak your mind, be kind, be inclusive, take care of people, do the things that Rod Serling, in a way, taught us how to do. So, sorry, thanks.
You mentioned Patrice. Okay. Yeah, thanks. You mentioned Patrice, and I want to thank her for something that she did that was tremendously helpful to Becky's and my career. We had written an episode that was straight, serious, dramatic, called The Beacon. The less said about that, the better, perhaps. Although there are funny stories I can share about it.
Bag of wigs.
But we sold them, but can she type? And Patrice was the script typist and was typing it, and it came back to us. We were freelance on the first season, we joined staff in the second. It came back to us that Patrice laughed so loud and so long while typing the script that Phil came out of his office and said, "What the hell's going on out here?" And she said, "It's funny, it's funny." And he went, "Oh, okay." And so much so, apparently, that we got on staff the following season. So we owe a debt of gratitude to everybody on this panel, and certainly to Alan. But I want to add a special shout out to Patrice for the help she gave us.
Well deserved.
This sort of leads into something I was going to ask you guys. This is sort of a joint question for the two of you. I mean, we all worship the ground that Rod Serling walked on. But there was one thing on Twilight Zone that the original Twilight Zone, they could never quite do, and that was comedy. I think we all remember that laugh riot, Cavendish is coming.
Yeah. Well, I got to jump in here, too, with something else, because neither of them demonstrates it. When we were first associated with the show, we were party to an awful lot of conversations on staff, I should say, about we don't want to remake any of the original episodes unless we're confident we can do a better job with them. And I have to say that I think in seeing Night of the Meek again tonight, you did it. That's an example of outdoing the original show. And I believe, I can say that because I wasn't involved with it. When I first heard that Richard Mulligan had been cast in the original Art Carney role, I was like very dubious because I was thinking of that that crazy over-the-top thing that he was noted for, and I couldn't see it working. But the way it was directed and the way it was written and acted, just, I mean, I saw it again tonight. It always brings me to tears, and it's a perfect example of improving over the original, I think.
A great Christmas show for sure.
As far as comedy goes,
How do you write a Twilight Zone episode that is both Twilight Zone and funny?
well, the weird thing is, I ended up in a sitcom, and I regret that move. But funny is an expression of people's personality. I think a lot of times in drama, some of the comedy comes off clunky because they're trying to put in a joke. And I think comedy comes from the character. And if the character is in a situation that is in fact potentially funny, and we can see in this particular episode, she's safe, we don't have to worry. So it comes from, I think, that just the same place. You write the characters and the story to facilitate humor. You can't shove humor into drama.